actually a way of thinking that forces discipline into the earliest stages of building a business, where most decisions are driven less by evidence and more by emotion. Instead of treating capital as a tool for immediate execution, this approach reframes it as something that should only be deployed after a series of small, controlled observations have revealed whether an idea has any real connection to demand. And this subtle shift changes the entire trajectory of how a business is formed. When someone first conceives an idea, there is often a strong internal sense of certainty that the idea is valuable, and this feeling can be persuasive enough to justify spending. Yet the market does not respond to internal certainty. It responds to external relevance. And the gap between those two realities is where most early losses occur. The experiment exists to close that gap by introducing a structured delay between idea and investment, allowing time for the idea to be exposed to real conditions without requiring significant financial commitment. At this stage, the process becomes less about building and more about defining, because clarity determines the quality of every test that follows, and without it, even the most carefully designed experiment produces misleading results. A vague idea invites vague feedback, while a specific idea creates measurable reactions. So the focus gradually shifts toward identifying a clear audience, a precise problem, and a distinct form of value that can be communicated simply enough for someone unfamiliar with the concept to understand immediately. Once this clarity is established, the next transition is subtle but important, moving from abstract thinking into tangible representation, not in the form of a finished product, but in the form of something that allows the idea to be seen, questioned, and responded to. This representation does not require completeness, and in many cases, its incompleteness is what makes it useful, because it reduces the cost of iteration and makes it easier to adjust, based on feedback rather than forcing the creator to defend a fully built version that may not align with what people actually want. As the idea takes shape in this simplified form, it becomes possible to introduce it into real environments, where attention can be measured, not as a vanity metric, but as an early signal of relevance. However, attention alone is not treated as validation, because interest without commitment can be misleading, and the experiment distinguishes carefully between passive engagement and active response. The moment someone is willing to take a step that involves effort or risk, such as making a payment, reserving a spot, or explicitly requesting the product, the nature of the feedback changes from opinion to behavior. This distinction is central to the logic of the experiment, because behavior carries information that opinions do not, and it allows decisions to be based on observable actions rather than assumptions. When people decline to act, the absence of behavior becomes just as informative as its presence, guiding adjustments in positioning, pricing, or even the core idea itself. In this way, each interaction contributes to a growing set of data points that gradually shape the direction of the business. The role of money within this process is intentionally minimized, not because it lacks importance, but because its premature use introduces noise into the decision-making process. When large amounts are spent early, the pressure to justify that spending can distort interpretation, leading to conclusions that protect the investment rather than reflect reality. By keeping financial exposure low, the experiment preserves objectivity, allowing each result to be evaluated on its own terms, without the influence of sunk costs. Over time, the accumulation of small tests creates a pattern, and patterns are more reliable than isolated outcomes, because they reveal consistency in how people respond across slightly different conditions. This consistency is what signals that an idea is not dependent on a single variable or a temporary moment, but has a level of stability that can support expansion. At this point, the role of capital begins to change, shifting from something that needs protection to something that can be used deliberately to accelerate what is already working. Even then, the discipline established in the early stages continues to influence decisions, because the habit of testing does not disappear once initial validation is achieved. Instead, it becomes part of the operating structure of the business, guiding how new features are introduced, how new markets are approached, and how resources are allocated. The experiment, in this sense, is not a one-time exercise but a framework that extends beyond the initial idea and into the ongoing development of the business. There is also an underlying psychological adjustment that occurs through this process, as the focus gradually moves away from attachment to any single idea and toward responsiveness to what the market reveals. This reduces the tendency to persist with concepts that are not gaining traction and increases the willingness to explore alternatives that may not have been considered initially. The result is a more adaptive approach, where direction is informed continuously, rather than decided once and defended indefinitely. In practical terms, the $10,000 figure remains present as a reference point, not as a requirement, but as a boundary that encourages careful allocation when the time for scaling arrives. Because the earlier stages have filtered out weaker ideas, the capital that is eventually deployed is supported by evidence, making each decision more grounded and less speculative. The difference is not simply in how much is spent, but in the conditions under which spending becomes justified. What emerges from this process is a business that is shaped gradually through interaction rather than constructed entirely from assumption. And this gradual shaping reduces the likelihood of large, irreversible mistakes. Instead of a single decisive launch, there is a sequence of smaller, reversible steps, each one informed by the last, creating a progression that is both controlled and responsive. In this way, the experiment serves as a counterbalance to the natural impulse to move quickly from idea to execution, introducing a measured pace that prioritizes understanding over expansion. It does not eliminate risk entirely, but it redistributes it into smaller portions that are easier to manage and learn from, allowing the overall process to remain flexible even as it moves forward. The outcome is not guaranteed success, and the framework does not attempt to provide certainty, but it does create conditions in which decisions are more closely aligned with actual demand, and in doing so, it reduces the distance between what is built and what is needed. This alignment, while not always visible in the early stages, becomes more apparent over time as each layer of testing contributes to a clearer understanding of where value exists and how it can be delivered effectively. At its core, the $10,000 experiment is less about preserving money and more about preserving accuracy, because accurate decisions compound in ways that financial savings alone cannot. And when accuracy is established early, it influences every subsequent stage of growth, shaping not only what is built, but how it evolves in response to the environment in which it